I am currently covered in dirt, but I need a video for this week and I'm running out of time, so we're doing this covered in dirt. Hi, I'm Laura and this is tropetrinitytrilogy. Today I'll be talking about my experience of my first year minoring in creative writing. So first things first, if you want to be an author, you don't need to major or minor in creative writing. But I need so many credits, so might as well put them into something I actually enjoy. My college doesn't specialize in creative writing, and I have seen some people vlog about majoring in creative writing in colleges that specialize in it, and they're like, it's so hard, and they talk about how hard it is. It's not particularly hard at my college. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of homework and a lot of readings, but the actual grading I didn't find particularly hard or harsh. In fact, I got A's in both my classes. However, I will say for my short story in the one class, it was hard to, I don't think anyone got over a 93. And if you're wondering, I got a 93. I don't know anyone who got a higher grade than me, but most people didn't go around saying it. Most people I asked got a 90, so that seemed pretty reasonable. I didn't find the work personally particularly hard. However, I am very invested in writing. I have watched a lot of writing videos on YouTube, so I do feel like I knew more coming into the classes, so that might have had an effect on how hard I thought it was. But also, again, this college doesn't even have a major for creative writing. You can only get a minor, so it's kind of like not specializing in it, so it's probably not that rigorous of a program. The two classes I took were creative writing nonfiction and creative writing fiction, both introductory level classes. These were all the books I had to use for them. First semester I took the creative writing nonfiction, which for that one I felt like the assignments were great easier, but we also had more assignments. We had to write multiple pieces. We had to write a memoir, one about food, one that's an artist introduction, and one about travel. And then we had the final assignment where we took one of those works and then expanded upon it for the final. When I went into creative writing nonfiction, it was mainly because creative writing fiction was already taken and I needed to take it to get this minor anyway. And I thought it would be boring, but actually I found it quite interesting. I remember in high school I had to read the creative writing nonfiction book, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, and I found that pretty interesting. So I actually kind of want to read more creative writing nonfiction. I'm not really interested in writing creative writing nonfiction outside of this class, but it was interesting. The two textbooks I had for it is this one, which was just talking about the ins and outs of writing creative writing nonfiction, what it's like to publish it, what you need to know so you don't get in trouble. And one thing I want to say is, you see this? Same publisher as Throne of Glass, which is an okay series, but most people know it, so I thought I'd mention that. I thought it was kind of funny how it's like, yeah, my textbook is this published by the same company that published a really popular YA novel. Didn't know that was a thing that could happen. Then the second one I found more interesting. It's the Best American Non-Required Reading 2015, which is actually picked out by students. And mine is used, it's covered in gunk. And the cool thing about creative writing nonfiction class is we didn't actually just have to do writing. You see there's comics. There's also one in here where they had women label different parts on a person and put their little description of themselves on it, so that was cool. And I actually found that class a lot more interesting than I thought it would. My favorite one to write was my memoir about myself, because I'm vain and who doesn't want to talk about it? However, the cool thing about this writing was we actually had to do it in the forms of different things we read. I started with it as a letter, and then I did a little description of myself, like the little picture in the book. This is me as a kid. And then I wrote traditional story method. Then I did me as a teenager. And then I did another little story of me as a teenager. And then I ended the letter. And this was pretty fun. I wrote the memoir in the form of a letter to my younger sister. And I found it pretty interesting. And I actually found it more interesting than I thought it would. Then I did another one that was a podcast, but it wasn't really a podcast. It was actually a video just with no images and audio, because I don't know how to make a podcast. But it counted as a podcast, so it's okay. And that one was actually about self-publishing and Eve the Awakening being self-published. I thought that would be a good concept because I read a lot, so I know mostly about books, and I thought it'd be good if I did an artist introduction about a book and what it means for self-publishing. And this was the only self-published book I read, and it's fairly successful, so I thought it'd be a good example. Then the other one I did was a PowerPoint about the food my mom makes. And then the last one was I went to an art exhibit on campus and compared it to a different social subject in society, opposed to social subjects not in society. Just ignore that sentence. Anyway, and then my final project was on the pros and cons of self-publishing, expanding upon the podcast of this one, but that one was in the form of a PowerPoint, which I feel like is something a lot of people on BookTube are interested in. Not really sure you want to see my project. It's kind of dry though. But the main thing I did was talk about the pros and cons of self-publishing. And I actually felt like I learned a lot, and it was something I was interested in because I also am kind of like, should I or should I not? Honestly, I still am sort of leaning towards traditionally publishing, partially because I can't afford an editor, and also because I like bookshelf. Like, I think it'd be cool to be in a brick and mortar bookstore, which these types of books aren't as much. But I have not decided. And actually, one thing I learned was that creative writing nonfiction is really not that dry, and it can be super interesting. We watched an entire movie about making sushi, and it made me really want to eat sushi. And then I ate it, and I realized I do not like sushi. But it made me hungry for sushi, which is something I don't like, and still don't like. But it looked great on camera. Quality film work. That was my first class. And then my second class was creative writing fiction, which was the one I really wanted to take. My textbook for that one was this, which I actually found pretty interesting. A lot of the stuff in it, though, I did feel like I kind of knew already. But the most interesting part was discussing all of these topics with the class. Also, I like the aesthetic of this textbook for some reason. Well, I like the aesthetic of this textbook too. And they both are like matte covers, so I like to pet them. I'm a strange person. But in both these classes, actually, I really like discussing with the class. That was one of my favorite parts. However, in this class, we didn't actually have a writing assignment till the end. But the difference was, in the other class, the teacher just graded it, whereas this one, we had to have it workshopped. And I had never had my stuff workshopped before, especially in such a formal environment where we're not allowed to comment as it's being workshopped. So that was stressful, but it was also fun, and a lot of people actually liked my story, which made me feel good about myself, because when I'm not being vain, I'm being self-deprecating. There's no in between. This class definitely involved the most papers. These are all notes reviewing my short story. Like, it doesn't end. Ever. However, I'm happy to say that pretty much all the reviews I got for my short story were positive. Of course, there were still some critiques, but I got a 93, so I'm pretty happy with that. You can see it has notes all over it, and the back too. This is my teacher's review, and his was pretty positive. Actually, part of me was like, this seems more poetic than my actual review of it. I kind of want to edit it one more time based on the reviews my teacher got, have some people read it over, tell me if it's good enough, and see if I can try to get published in a magazine. That'd be cool. And even if that doesn't work, my school has a magazine, so try to get published for my school one next year, which would be awesome. I really enjoyed writing my story. I also enjoyed reading the other people's stories. They were interesting, and one of them had a BioShock reference, and I got the BioShock reference, so I feel special. And then another one, I thought it had like some old-time philosopher reference. It didn't. I just got a reference where there wasn't one. So that one was slightly more awkward, but we'll ignore that. That's pretty much my experience. I am definitely enjoying this minor. It's fairly easy so far. I'm assuming it gets harder if I go to the upper level courses, which I plan to do. Unfortunately, I am not taking the next level creative writing next semester, but I do plan on taking it eventually. I might make a video later on more about my short story and having it critiqued, but for now, that was pretty much all I have to say about minoring in creative writing and the classes I've taken so far. I enjoyed it quite a bit. And that's all I have to say for now. If anyone's interested in my creative writing, if you have to get the credits, might as well, because the classes are fun. And if you enjoy creative writing, you probably will enjoy taking a class on it, at least more than your other classes. However, I will admit, I do not think I learned anything super exceptional in this class. I do think that a lot of the stuff I previously learned through reading and watching information about creative writing did help me quite a bit, and I did learn some things. However, I do not feel like I became way better at writing because of these classes. And I do feel like this is partially because my school is not as into it, and also I'm taking lower levels, so the stuff I taught myself through research probably has something to do with it. But I do think I have improved some, and I do realize some of my shortcomings. And I definitely want to try to edit my short story more, see what I can do with that. And yeah, so this video obviously was unscripted and I rambled a lot and it's not very informative, but it's a nice little chat, and I was in a rush to get a video in this week. And you're not paying, so these videos don't have to be any high quality. This is free content. This is as good as it gets. But yeah, so I hope you somewhat enjoyed whatever the heck this was, and I will see you next week, hopefully earlier than I am now.